So let me do that right now.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's great. Good. How's everybody? Pretty good?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Good. Douglas said he's facing 13 inches of snow, so he's busy cutting wood or gathering wood or whatever. So for the first time, he may not be with us.
Wow.
Shocking, shocking. I know. I said
So
like
let's badmouth him while he's not here.
exactly, exactly. Um, yeah. So we are facing up to 2+ inches of ice tomorrow. Freezing rain.
Nice.
Yes, ice, which can cause significant damage to trees and take out your power. Last time we had an ice storm, it ripped the power box out of our house, and we had no power for like 3 days. Some people in the Delta had no power for 6 weeks.
Hmm.
Um, so
They get
Mrs.
ice in the Delta?
Yep, they did in 1994.
Really?
Oh yeah, yeah, it was
Yeah.
amazing. I mean, all night long, it sounded like there was a war in our backyard because it was trees popping, you know. It's just crazy.
Where
So
Yeah.
where is Ole Miss? In the
Oxford,
state. Where is it?
Oxford, Oxford
Yeah.
is
Okay.
Far
70,
north. It's very far north.
pretty
Oh, it
far
is.
north. Oxford is 70 miles south of Memphis, and it's a 5 hour drive down to the coast. So yeah, we're pretty far north. Um, in a line from Tupelo, which is where Elvis Presley's from, and in a line from Clarksdale, in case you guys saw Sinners. Um, so that's where we
Not
are.
it's not the monkeys, Clarksville, though.
No, no, Clarksdale, Clarksdale, deep Delta, home of the blues, home of the blues. Um, okay, guys, so we'll get started. So Robinson Jeffers, to y'all's delight, is the first important California poet. Others who came after him would include Kenneth Rexroth, Gary Snyder, and the other beat poets. Um, Robert Hass, Brenda Hillman, Jane Hirschfield, and all of those are eco poets. So now we're going to actually be looking at eco poetry and what that involves. And then there's lots of others too. There's Wanda Coleman and um, whatever. Just a lot of people write poetry in California. But Jeffers is the first really important one. And he probably, as you know already, lived from 1887 to 1962. He was born in Pennsylvania in Allegheny, the son of a Presbyterian minister and a biblical scholar. His family traveled a lot when he was young, so he went to boarding school in both Switzerland and Germany. He was very, very smart, entered college at 15. The family moved to California and he enrolled at Occidental, which was then called Occidental Presbyterian College. And he graduated at age 18. He went on to study at both USC and the University of Washington. He studied literature, medicine, and forestry. He did a lot of work in science. So he's really kind of a polymath, and you see a lot of learning in his poetry. Um, there at graduate school, he met Una Call Custer in 1906. She was married, but they fell madly in love with each other. And eventually she was able to get divorced and they married in 1913. They were very, very close to each other. They had twin sons about whom he writes some, but he and Una were just really, really close to each other. Shortly after they married, they moved to Carmel by the sea, where he built both a stone house and a stone tower. The house is called, excuse me, Tor House, and the tower is called Hawk Tower. And that's where they lived for the rest of their lives. At this point, he started writing poetry seriously. His first book, Flagons and Apples, came out in 1912, but the book that made him famous came out in 1924, and this is Tamar and Other Poems. A year later, Roan Stallion was added to it. He became like really, really famous at this point, and he developed his doctrine of what he calls inhumanism. This is really at the center of his poetry and important to understand. And it's also kind of a major eco poetic tenet. in humanism, he describes as, quote, a shifting of emphasis from man to non-man, the rejection of human solipsism and recognition of the transhuman magnificence. It offers a reasonable detachment as a rule of conduct instead of love, hate, and envy. So he takes as his talismanic objects the hawk and the rock, the hawk and stone. And he writes just a lot about, the land around him, especially the sea, the cliffs, the hawk. And he does write about people, but always not just in this background, but as in a sense subsumed by this natural environment. Um, his pinnacle of fame was in the 20s and 30s. He was on the cover of Time magazine in 1932, which is pretty cool. And his version of Medea appeared on Broadway in 1946, starring Judith Anderson. But public opinion started to turn against him during World War II because of his political views, or let's just say his apolitical views. He was a pacifist. He also hated FDR, um, and his inhumanism was really frightening and off-putting to many people who feared that he was preaching the end of the human race. He published a book called The Devil Acts in 1948, but the publisher on the cover of the book warned that some of the poems might be seen as, quote, unpatriotic. So he died in 1962. Una died in 1950. He died in 1962 in Carmel. Chris Kokinos, who's a scholar of poetry, says that Jeffers was, quote, California's first important poet. He says Jeffers was befriended by Ansel Adams, admired by a cadre of nature writers that included Lauren Isley, invoked in books and on calendars by conservation organizations such as the Sierra Club. Robinson Jeffers is a kind of poet laureate of the environmental movement. And that's actually really pretty true. So that's just a little bit about his life. Um, and I wanted to spend some time with you looking at the poets. But oh, hi, Douglas. Is there anything you want to add about his life? Yeah, Peter wants to add.
There's something I'd want to challenge. I wouldn't call Jeffers a pacifist. He hated war, but so have many soldiers and even generals. And he felt that the two world wars were best seen as part of humanity's drive to self-destruction. He was more or less with the American side in World War II, but he didn't like the Popular Front. He didn't like patriotic rhetoric. And he was a very solitary man,
Yeah.
kind of a loner. So I think it's a bit misleading to see him
Just
either
as
as a political reactionary, which is not quite right, although Spengler was a tremendous influence on him, the decline of the West, or to see him as a pacifist in the way that Martin Luther King Jr. or Kenneth Rexroth was a pacifist.
True. Thank you. Yeah, that's true. That's good. So let's look.
And
Hi. Hi, Douglas.
I have one question. I'm sorry, I'm late, but I recall that Henry Miller, when he was living in Big Sur, he mentioned that he was, just up the road from a poet, and I thought it was Robinson Jeffers. Was that him, or was it somebody
I
else?
think so. I
Yeah.
think so.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
also, and you mentioned that he hated FDR. Is it just because FDR was basically the guy who was doing all the war stuff for the US, or was there some other reason why he hated him?
He probably hated the idea of social programs, do you think?
He didn't like the idea of the governments taking as large a part and being as centralized as it was under the New Deal. But there's also a poem where he refers, in a way that makes me wince, to the cripple's power lust of Roosevelt. And I'm not saying that's entirely wrong, but it does seem very unfair.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think he was with the Republican isolationists exactly. He was kind of beyond that position too.
Yeah. Yeah, he just really was. Well, although I read a really interesting introductory essay to his collected poems, which is published by Stanford University Press. And Mark Van Doren, the writer poet, delivered a eulogy for Jeffers after he died and said everybody thought of Jeffers as this, crabby, crusty loner, but he said actually he was a lot of fun to be with. So he's a really complicated character, but I think Peter's absolutely right when he says he's kind of beyond either a political position on the right or a political position on the left. He just really was a very solitary figure. And he was living in a place, as you guys know, that at that time was not developed. It's like the coast of California, south of San Francisco. There's a lot of wild land. There weren't that many people living on it. It had not yet been developed. And he was able to just live there with a lot of solitude, um, surrounded by the natural world with his family. Yeah, Douglas.
Yeah, in Big Sur and the Oranges of Hieronymus Bosch by Henry Miller, he mentions that the mail only came once a week, and on this one truck that would come down Big Sur,
Yeah,
and so it was totally wild.
yeah, it'd be really beautiful. Barry.
While you're talking about Henry Miller, there is actually a Henry Miller museum and bookstore in Big Sur, which I have visited, and I hope it's still there. But it's really a charming little place, and so it's I recommend it if you're in Big Sur.
That's so cool. And I would really like to see Tor House and Hawk's Nest, I would like to go there and see them. They're national landmarks now. Lauren, you've seen them, right? Laurel?
So
Have you been there?
no,
Oh, shoot. Has anybody been there? All you Californians falling down on your poetic duty? Well,
Well, they just reopened the road. You couldn't even get there.
wow, that's pretty crazy.
I spent time in Big Sur at Limekiln Creek in like it must have been 1969 or 70, and that was great. I mean, that was amazing.
well, so I should say I haven't been there. I haven't been to Big Sur in a long time.
Uh-huh.
As a kid, we were camping there,
Yeah.
and with family friends, and I guess, yeah.
Well, let's look at some poems, okay? I chose one of my favorites to start us out. So, Tony, if we can screen share.
Okay, I was just waiting for your signal about what one you want to talk about.
Shine Perishing Republic, which seems particularly appropriate for this week.
Right at the top. Okay, you got it.
I love this poem. I love this poem. Shine, Perishing Republic. While this America settles in the mold of its vulgarity, heavily thickening to empire, and protest, only a bubble in the molten mass pops and sighs out, and the mass hardens. I sadly smiling remember that the flower fades to make fruit, the fruit rots to make earth. Out of the mother and through the spring exultances, ripeness and decadence, and home to the mother. You making haste, haste on decay, not blameworthy. Life is good, be it stubbornly long or suddenly a mortal splendor. Meteors are not needed less than mountains. Shine, perishing republic. But for my children, I would have them keep their distance from the thickening center. Corruption never has been compulsory. When the cities lie at the monster's feet, there are left the mountains. And boys, be in nothing so moderate as in love of man, a clever servant, insufferable master. There is the trap that catches noblest spirits, that caught, they say, God when he walked on earth. So this really has Jeffers' major themes, you know. I think it's a really beautiful poem. It has his characteristic long lines. I remember the first time I ever saw a poem by Jeffers, I was living in Berkeley. I was a kid, like maybe 12 or 13. And for some reason, there was a book of his poetry, and I opened it, and I was just absolutely blown away by these long spillover lines, you know. Didn't rhyme, not metrical. Whitman was a big influence on his work, poetically speaking. But so we've got this sort of it's a prose-like kind of poetry. It's a discursive kind of poetry, but I think the images in it are really beautiful. Let's come back to the poem, okay?
Oh, sorry.
That's okay, because I want to talk specifically about it a little bit, and I can't find my book.
Oh, okay.
So I'm gonna have to rely on this. Okay, so we've got, the first stanza describing his view of America. And as I say, I was thinking a lot about this poem this past week, heavily thickening to empire, the mold of its vulgarity, all the totally insane stuff that's going on right now. Protest, luckily, is not only a bubble in the molten mass, but nevertheless, protest is not as powerful as the vulgar thickening toward empire that's going on. And then you've got this second stanza that reverts to natural imagery of process, decay, birth, flowering, decadence, death. And this is something that Jeffers repeats over and over and over again in natural cycles, including death. He writes a lot about death, and he writes about death as the absolutely natural end of things, nothing to be feared, nothing to be loathed, something to be accepted. Out of the mother through the spring exultances, ripeness, and decadence, and home to the mother. And then you making haste on decay. And I think this stanza is so, so moving. Life is good, be it stubbornly long or suddenly a mortal splendor. And you can think about, the fact that the American Republic, when he wrote this poem, was what, 150 years old? Meteors are not needed less than mountains. And then you've got this beautiful phrase, shine, perishing republic. Well, it's still perishing. I'm not sure it's shining, but this affirmation that it shines as it perishes. And then turning to the children, his twin sons, I would have them keep their distance from the thickening center, from the cities, from the East Coast. He's very much a West Coast poet. Corruption never has been compulsory. The next phrase is so sad to me. When the cities lie at the monster's feet, there are left the mountains. The mountains are not uncorrupted now, you know? And so a century after this poem was written, we can see the ecopoetics that it's expressing. We would have to say there's been an enormous decline in the idea that there's any place that's uncorrupted, that there's any place left to turn to where the monster hasn't been. And then finally, this kind of advice to be pretty solitary, be in nothing so moderate as in love of man, a clever servant, insufferable master. And then this Christian note at the end. There is the trap that catches noblest spirits that caught, they say, God when he walked on earth. I just see a little echo of his father, the Presbyterian minister there. Jeffers was not, a Christian believer at this point in his life, but still the imagery shows up both here and then in a poem like The Roan Stallion is still part of his, what Eliot would call his deep image bank. Yeah, Barry?
Question about the second to last line. Uh, why is love of man considered moderate? Being nothing so moderate as in love of man. I
He's,
would.
You're supposed to moderate your love of man. That's what he's saying.
yeah,
Oh,
he's
oh,
saying
I
Don't be
see.
extravagant in your love of
exactly.
man.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. Got it.
Moderate love of man is all right, but sacrificing yourself for man, as Jesus did, is a mistake.
Or passionately loving human
Or,
Got
beings.
it.
or making the love of other human beings kind of the center of your life.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
But sons did marry, and in the Dear Lady Down There Bones, he mentions his grandchild, and so it's like the family was capable of passionate love, deep, deep love
Yeah.
for each other and for other people. But he's just saying, what? Don't turn all your affection to the human race.
Yeah.
Be
but
moderate
who
love, man.
but
Well,
who
he's
does that? I mean, people love individuals. Almost everyone
yeah.
disparages society, and they, the everybody hates politicians, but they love individual people. Isn't that what everybody does?
Charlie Brown
I
said,
mean,
"I I love humanity. It's the people I can't stand."
yeah, right. And
Yeah.
and also, what if you do love humanity and you spend your life serving, doing things like Gandhi or Mother Teresa or something like that? What's
Not
wrong with
Mother
that?
Teresa.
Nothing's wrong with
I
it.
know, I know,
No,
I don't know much about her. Hitchens hates her, but whatever. I mean, you get the idea. The picture of the person who is uh, taking a vow of poverty and doing what they can to serve the poor, even if the poor are um, uh, not close to you, and especially if they're not close to you. You go to the place where suffering exists and you try to assuage it or ameliorate it. I'm not sure, and I know I'm probably going against the grain here, but I'm not sure I agree with this sentiment. I mean, on the one hand, I think it's universal. Everybody disparages mankind and how horrible they are, but also everybody loves individual people,
well, sure.
and even that you can extend your love to the poor and just in general.
Of course. Jeffers is, as an individual poet, he's not responsible for answering all those questions. But he's talking about, I mean, sure, there are actual saintly people, like Gandhi,
Well,
right?
he
Like
does
not
say,
Gandhi.
excuse me, he does say it's the trap that catches noblest spirits. And noble is a very positive word, and more so for Jeffers than for many other poets. So he is saying, in a sense, it's noble to want to love or at least do something for all other human beings, but it can also be a trap. And I don't
Well,
know how Mother
that's what
Teresa,
I got from it. That it is actually uh, the Achilles heel of a noble spirit, that they'll
that's
actually go
exactly
out and
what
love
I'm saying.
people. Is that's a weakness, not as they shouldn't love mankind or something. What am I?
It's the
What is he
trap that
saying there?
catches them all.
They shouldn't go
Yeah,
overboard in love of
Yeah,
mankind.
you know, Jeffers does not have the same personality that you have,
No.
right? And primary
well,
allegiances, his primary allegiances as a human being are to his family and to the other than human world. That's just a fact.
yeah, but that's not unusual.
Yeah, I don't know about that. Leslie?
Well, I'm sort of reading this a little bit differently as being more about um, his viewpoint of beware of being caught by having love only for humans. Rather,
Yeah.
it's not a human-centered world. It's more like I've been reading Braiding Sweetgrass again, and it's more like humans are part or one of the animals, part of nature, not the most important part of nature, maybe a very destructive part of nature. And this is more about it's not that you can't love your fellow man, but let don't ignore the other parts. Man is just a part of the whole.
Yeah. Um, I think you're absolutely right. It's just that I think that Jeffers's attitude toward, let's just say, if you can imagine a scale, the human race would be lighter than the other than human world.
Yeah.
Do you know? I mean, for most people, human beings would be heavier on that scale. And for some people, they would be the only thing that was on the scale, like Trump,
Yeah.
you know? But for Jeffers, the other than human world, the hawk, the rock, the ocean, that in a way is what is most deeply meaningful for him rather than the collective human race.
He believed all that, but I think at the end of Shine Perishing Republic, he isn't really alluding to it. He is saying, in effect, to put it very crudely, humanitarianism can be a trap.
Yeah.
Love of humanity can be a trap. Watch out.
Douglas?
Yeah. Did you say when this poem was written?
This is from his first book.
Not 24.
Yeah, from the 1924 book.
1924.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's move on because I think that that'll clarify some things with the other poems, okay?
Okay.
So just keep going. Okay, so yeah, Carmel Point. So just think about, you know, California 100 years ago, and specifically the coast 100 years ago or 120 years ago. Carmel Point, the extraordinary patience of things. This beautiful place defaced with a crop of suburban houses. How beautiful when we first beheld it. Unbroken field of poppy and lupin, walled with clean cliffs. No intrusion but 2 or 3 horses pasturing, or a few milk cows rubbing their flanks on the outcrop rockheads. Now the spoiler has come. Does it care? Not faintly. It has all time. It knows the people are a tide that swells and in time will ebb, and all their works dissolve. Meanwhile, the image of the pristine beauty lives in the very grain of the granite, safe as the endless ocean that climbs our cliff. As for us, we must uncenter our minds from ourselves. We must unhumanize our views a little and become confident as the rock and ocean that we were made from. We must uncenter our minds from ourselves. I think that's the key phrase in this poem. I love this poem too. But think about, development. And Jeffers and Una came to Carmel Point in about 1900. When did they marry? 1913. So they saw it before it was developed. They saw, the cliffs, the poppy, the lupin, a few horses, a few cows. Obviously, there were some, people ranching there, but largely just the other than human world. And then you see this craze for development. Yeah, Laurel?
I was just thinking that he's complaining about this area, which is that whole little area just south of Carmel, defaced with suburban houses, one of which was the one he built.
Well, yeah.
So he wants a bit of an exception for his own presence. I'm sorry, but this is sort of we're dealing with this in Davis. I'm here, but I don't want anyone else to be here. So
Not in my neighborhood. Yeah, it's true. It's true. I kind of feel like you guys are holding Jeffers to higher standards than you held people like Wallace Stevens,
Oh, no, no, no. That's a beautiful place. It's absolutely gorgeous. My mother lived there for, whatever in World War II and in one of those houses right out on the point. And so I'm not going to argue with him about how beautiful it was. But at the same time, I'm not going to hold him to a higher standard. I just think there's a lament here that also includes his own presence, or should, I think, and it may be kind of lurking in there. And I will be curious in later poems because he wants this to be as it was.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Yeah.
On Cook's second voyage to Tahiti, he said it had been ruined by Western influence. On
And
his second voyage. This is the second time Europeans
Yeah.
had been to Tahiti, and it was no more like it was.
yeah,
They it lost it.
yeah,
Melville felt that very strongly about the South Sea Islands too.
yeah. I would, oh yeah, Douglas.
I just had been thinking before Tony said that when I lived in Kailua on Oahu, um, it's like mind-bogglingly beautiful place, but it was, there was just suburban tract housing and the Miracle Mile with car dealerships and Taco Bell, and it was just like, whoa, give me a
Yeah,
break. And when I lived in New Hampshire, I literally out my backyard, you could see a hill that was the southern boundary of White Mountain National Forest, and you could, at least theoretically, walk to Canada and not see anybody. I mean, that was wild. But then you could see pink subdivision flags along some of the back roads in the early 80s when there was this craze of building and stuff, which fortunately was nipped by a recession. But
yeah,
it's like,
yeah, yeah,
My parents did something really nice for me and my sisters and our families in the 90s. They would rent a house with many, with also a guest house. And I was just looking in Malpaso, which is some distance south of Carmel. It's still kind of in the area. And that's also a point. And I had to get out the map and look and see if that was Carmel Point. And the house, there was a trail right next to our house that went down to Garapata Beach, which is Tick Beach. And there was a creek that was full of watercress, just endless watercress for dinner. And one time on that beach, which was absolutely deserted, we saw a sea lion just sitting there, and above it was a suburban development, and it really, the houses were similar to houses you'd find other places, and there was really no evidence that the folks in those houses had any interaction with the beach below. So that was kind of disturbing.
yeah,
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Leslie?
Well, I don't think he's saying that humans shouldn't live any place beautiful. I think he's saying there's a difference between building Tor house out of local rocks with your hands and putting in a subdivision with Taco Bell, you know. So, and then I think that one of the big questions I accidentally came across an essay by somebody was talking about this criticism of Jeffers that when does you include him and when is he preaching to the other people who haven't figured out what he figured out, because apparently there was a shift and that people get offended if they think somebody who has figured it all out is telling them what they should know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if the only houses that were built there were built out of stone by the person who lived in it, then it would be a far less crowded place. You're absolutely right. But I mean, I think the really important line here is we must uncenter our minds from ourselves. That is just a great way to think about what an eco consciousness is all about, that we are not at the center of the universe, that we are part of the universe, and that the universe existed before us, it will exist after us. It has all time. It knows that people are a tide that swells and in time will ebb and all their works dissolve. That's like the end of the Tempest Prospero. Um, when Prospero says everything will dissolve, these are, what is it? These are,
And like this unsubstantial pageant faded, the cloud-capped towers, the gorgeous palaces, the solemn temples, the great globe itself, yea, all which it inherit shall dissolve, and like this insubstantial pageant faded, leave not a rack behind.
yeah, it's that same sense of just the enormous nature of time. Gary Snyder at one point says We worry about the extinction of everything. He says even if the humans are extinct, there'll still be algae. You're like, oh, great, that's
The-
comfort. But it's a fact.
So, um, I had that sort of sense that say that Laurel kind of brought up because we're all kind of, oh, don't put it here, but what I think that the core of this is that there is something here that it's beautiful and that there's this encroachment, but to all you people encroaching, realize that you're not the only one. I mean, to give it a slightly better gloss than saying, "Hey, you're just another NIMBY." You liked it, you built your house, but those other people are terrible. But he's giving us the chance to view this in this more pristine stage and say, "Hey, that's important. Pay attention to that."
Yeah, sure. Which is why the Sierra Club loves this stuff. But I mean, if you live in a place like Mississippi, and I don't know, probably where some of you guys live too, you can see this process. If you get off the beaten track in Mississippi, you'll see, places where a house used to be and there's only a burned out chimney, or you'll see houses in extreme stages of dereliction, or like I know, Thoreau writes about seeing lilac bushes where there used to be homesteads in the
Yep.
wood, and you can see yeah, my name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty in despair. Yeah, I mean, you can see the passage of time and the fact that um civilizations rise and fall, houses are built, houses decay, people are born, people live, people die. And yet we think, I mean, just look at like what's happening, how we're acting in the world. We think we're the only things that matter, you know, which is why we're signing leases for more oil drilling, which is why Trump wants to own Greenland, all this stuff that's going on. Laurel, yeah.
I think Leslie had her hand up, but
Um, I don't want to talk too much, but I've been reading The Wind in the Willows to the people.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
assisted living, which is, of course, the animals are people, but still, it had this. I just finished reading this wonderful passage where the badger is explaining the wild woods to Molly, and he's saying, well, very long ago on this, where the wildwood waves now, before ever it had planted itself and grown up to what it is now, there was a city of people. Here where we're standing, they lived and walked and talked and slept and carried on their business. Here they stabled their horses and feasted. From here they rode out to fight or drove out to trade. They were a powerful people and rich and great builders. They built to last, for they thought their city would last forever. And then the mole asks what happened to them. And he says, well, people come, they stay for a while, they flourish, they build, and they go. It's their way. But we remain.
Yeah, that's nice. That's nice. That reminds me of Frost Poem Directive too, the one that we read. Yeah, Laura.
so I'm just thinking of three little examples. When I was growing up in San Jose, um, one of my friends lived very close to a little creek that ran down from Vasona Reservoir down, and we would go out and walk through a little meadow across the street from her house and down to the little creek, and there were tadpoles and all sorts of things. It's now completely under Highway 17, turned into the extension of 280 or something, and there's just nothing, but it's going to be harder to make that highway go away, but it's not as solid as the rocks. And the
Yeah.
example that of New England, and Douglas obviously knows, you walk through the woods there and there'll be little remnants of old stone walls
Yeah.
and gravestones. And Dan and I were in Ireland visiting his cousins there in County Galway, and there you drive through and there'll be miles and miles where there are little ruins of cottages where people lived and died during the famine or exiled, left for the US or England or whatever. And the population of Ireland has only just in the last couple of years almost reached what it was before the famine.
Yeah.
And then of course it's much more urban now. So whether those but those beautiful green fields and the field where at the farm where his mom was born and lived the first few years before her mother died, and the great aunts came and swooped in and took her away, saying she couldn't live all alone with her brothers and her father. But there's a spring out there that was supposedly a well, I should say, not a spring, that was supposedly dug by St. Patrick
Oh yeah, yeah,
in between, chasing the snakes out. But it's still there, this little place where water just wells up,
yeah,
and so you can still see like little traces, but it has moss and frogs and I don't know what all now.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, it is.
Yeah. For those who are fans of the decay of civilization, there's a book called The World Without Us, which
Yeah,
is it sort
Mhm.
of describes over time how civilization decays without any intervention by humans. Skyscrapers gradually fall apart, and here's how they fall apart, et cetera, et cetera. And there's a series, a TV series, I think it's called The Last One Left or some such, which is about the ant fungus that's taken over the world and civilization is gone. And when I saw that, it just seemed very reminiscent of reading this book. And it turned out the book was a major inspiration to the creators of that series.
what's the series called?
I think it's called The Last One Left or some such. It's a very, very well known and popular series.
Yeah, I want to check
I think
that out.
The
Yeah,
it's
World
on
Without Us
Netflix,
is
I
a
think.
good book. I've read about two-thirds of it because I was reading it some. I don't own the book, but it's a very good book. I agree.
yeah. And it's amazing
This,
how quickly
I'm
things
sorry,
start. Go ahead.
this all seems like it has a biblical arc to it. Like there was an Eden, we screwed it all up, and there will be a judgment day.
Well, I don't know if he thinks there'll be a judgment day.
Well, I
There's
was referring to just what was being discussed about the end of civilization and the rise of the insects and algae.
oh
That we'll get our comeuppance
well,
eventually.
we will. We will. Yeah. Let's look at another poem, okay? This is the kind of poetry that I taught all the time and I really loved it. Point Joe. This is cool. I like this one. It's not a poem that I had known very much until I was scrounging around online. Point Joe. Point Joe has teeth and has torn ships. It has fierce and solitary beauty. Walk there all day, you shall see nothing that will not make part of a poem. I saw the spars and planks of shipwreck on the rocks, and beyond the desolate sea meadows rose the warped, wind-bitten van of the pines, a fog bank, vaulted forest and all. The flat sea meadows at that time of year were planted golden with the low flower called footsteps of the spring, millions of flowerets, whose light suffused upward into the fog, flooded its vault. We wandered through a weird country where the light beat up from earthward and was golden. One other moved there, an old Chinaman gathering seaweed from the sea rocks. He brought it in his basket and spread it flat to dry on the edge of the meadow. Permanent things are what is needful in a poem, things temporally of great dimension, things continually renewed or always present. Grass that is made each year equals the mountains in her past and future. Fashionable and momentary things we need not see nor speak of. Man gleaning food between the solemn presences of land and ocean, on shores where better men have shipwrecked, under fog and among flowers, equals the mountains in his past and future. That glow from the earth was only a trick of nature's. One must forgive nature 1,000 graceful subtleties. Does anybody know where Point Joe is?
Yes,
Where is
it's in Del Monte Forest or Del Monte, whatever it is, it's along the 17-mile drive.
Oh, cool.
Looks very, very much like the entrance to Monterey Bay, apparently. So
Uh-huh.
if you're a ship sailing north, you could think and especially in the fog, as we have had recently, you could think you've reached Monterey Bay, make your little right turn and go smush.
Wow.
Apparently that happened to a lot of ships,
That's
but
a really powerful coastline. That's amazing. Yeah. Well,
Anyone collecting seaweed on that shore these days might also collect golf balls.
oh, really?
Yes, since their golf course is just inland.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So Tony was just talking
Are you
about
going out,
Eden.
Elijah?
Yeah, no, so I was just saying I'll be right back.
Okay, all right. Yes, I'll be done.
Tony was just talking about Eden, and here we've got this Edenic image formed by nature, right? Where the millions of flowerets of footsteps of the spring, they're golden yellow and they shine upwards into the air. It's like the fog is golden. So it seems as if you're walking in the golden age, or it seems as if you're walking in heaven or in Eden, you know. But he says then he kind of makes a joke. This is one of nature's thousand graceful subtleties. But I think it's interesting at the end of the poem too, because he wants to insist that poetry needs to be made of permanent things. Well, things of great dimension, things continually renewed or always present. So those are some important qualifications there. First, he says permanent things. And we would think, well, flowers aren't permanent. Grass isn't permanent. Chinese people aren't permanent. You're not permanent. I'm not permanent. So he needs to qualify that. And he says, it's like what Williams says when he says poetry can be made of anything. And I'm going to misquote here, but as long as it be grasped by the senses and understood to be part of what it is, a continually repeated permanence. So what they're both saying is poetry shouldn't just be made out of trivialities, like, the latest fashion in hemlines or the latest Rockettes parade or something like that. That poetry, and what Jeffers is saying here, of course, is that he wants poetry to be made of things in nature and including people who are deeply embedded in nature, who are, for instance, gathering food, walking by the ocean, right? So I think that's really interesting, the kind of steps of qualification that he takes here when he's thinking about, okay, what should poetry be made of? And he's a person who will say should. He's not just saying, I want to do this. He's saying, this is what poetry, this ancient art, needs to be rooted in, needs to be grounded in. Literally the ground, literally the roots, literally the cliff.
I was struck by the word forgive in the last line.
Yeah.
It doesn't quite feel right.
Do you think he's making kind of a joke here?
Well, that could be, but
You know,
it feels off center to me.
it feels off center.
Yeah.
It feels off center to me too.
I mean, the thousand graceful subtleties are admirable.
Yeah.
They're a grace.
Yeah.
One doesn't forgive grace,
Right. It's true. But I think it works for me because he said that glow from the earth was only a trick of nature's. That is to say, he's been feeling like he's walking in eternity, as he walks in this golden light and presumably with his beloved. It sounds like he's walking with his beloved through this golden meadow. And I guess I interpret it as sort of indicating he feels like he's walking through timelessness, through, a sanctified world or a world of eternity, a world of Eden or the golden age. And then, but no, it's really just time. It's just a trick of nature that at this moment, the light is suffused with gold and the beauty is everything that's around.
When we describe nature and all of its beauty and ignore the ugliness that happens in nature, I'm not sure we aren't imposing our human values on our appreciation of nature. Nature does a lot of really horrifying things.
He'll get there.
Like what?
Oh, he will?
Yeah, he'll get there.
Okay, I'll shut up.
Yeah, he'll get there. Leslie.
Well, I'm thinking about the way I've heard that phrase, one must forgive. And it's always when somebody means they don't think that it needs to be forgiven. You know, you must forgive me my enthusiasm.
Yeah,
They
that's
they
clever.
don't it's like, well, bless his heart. You know, it's a phrase that isn't used literally.
That's
Yeah.
that's totally right.
I'm with you too, because it's a sense that we would say, well, that was really fascinating. We'll forgive them. Hey, we weren't that clever, but we'll forgive them for being that, because that's really what's going on. I love that phrase.
Yeah.
I love the whole thing. This is that whole last stanza is great.
Yeah, I do. I love it too. Um, Nobody but a Southerner can use bless his heart in the best way, you know. Bless,
Collection.
bless his heart, he killed his mother.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Bless his heart, he broke my leg with that RV. I love it. I love it. Um, yeah, okay, so that was a new poem for me, Point Joe. I had not noticed that before. We have time to look at one more. Let's go down. Oh, this is sweet. This has got to be a love poem for Una, because Helen, of course, is Helen of Troy, but Jeffers, like Yeats, is doing some mythologizing here. The beloved is figured as Helen. Your hair is long and wonderful. It is dark with golden lights in the length of it. Long, lovely, liquid, glorious is your hair, and lustrous, scented with summertime. Beware when you are combing it in the nights and mornings, shaking its splendor out. I bid you comb it carefully, for my soul is caught there, wound in the web of it. I like that. I think it's pretty. It's very, you know, it's very essentialistic, right? But it reminds me, do you guys know Yeats's poem Brown Penny? Do you know it? One of Yeats's most beautiful poems. Do you know Brown Penny by heart?
Yeah.
Peter will now say Brown Penny. I know it by heart, but not on command.
I whispered, I am too young, and then I am old enough. Wherefore I threw a penny to find out if I might love. Go and love, young man, if the lady be young and fair. O penny, brown penny, brown penny, I am looped in the loops of her hair. O love is the crooked thing. There is nobody wise enough to find out all that is in it, for he would be thinking of love till the stars had run away and the shadows eaten the moon. Ah, penny, brown penny, one cannot begin it too soon.
Yeah, I love that. When I was at Tim Ryan, now Walker Ryan, told me that was his favorite poem in the world. And so that's how I learned that poem. I think it's really nice. Yeah, but I mean, look at the beautiful L sounds here. Golden lights in the length of it, long, lovely, liquid, glorious, lustrous, and then scented with summertime. Beautiful sound patterns here. And such a simple poem, but such a magical web of sounds. Yeah. And remember Wallace Stevens with a woman combing? So here we have this image again of combing. Why combing? I guess, making something smooth out of something tangled. The sensuousness of it. I don't know. I don't know. Combing my hair doesn't take much time, but people with long, lustrous hair might have a different story to tell.
The Lorelei in Heine's poem is also combing her hair
Oh,
when
yeah.
he lures the shipman to his
Oh, yeah.
destruction.
Yeah, absolutely.
Your goldenes haar.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's go. Let's look. That's a quickie, but we can look at one more. Now, let's not do this one. We'll start next time with this one. Okay, we'll see where we get. Rock and Hawk. Rock and the Hawk. Sounds like a rock band. Here is a symbol in which many high tragic thoughts watch their own eyes. The gray rock standing tall on the headland where the sea wind lets no tree grow. Earthquake proved and signatured by ages of storms. On its peak, a falcon has perched. I think, here is your emblem to hang in the future sky. Not the cross, not the hive, but this bright power, dark peace. Fierce consciousness joined with final disinterestedness. Life with calm death. The falcon's realist eyes and act married to the massive mysticism of stone, which failure cannot cast down, nor success make proud. Thoughts on this one? Again, this is a kind of talismanic poem for Jeffers. His emblems. The rock.
Well, I think this is a good summary of all the things you described about his worldview. You know, he has this tremendous admiration for the hawk, which is, after all, an animal that whose job is to kill other animals.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's fierce. It's noble. It's, yeah, absolutely. And then the rock, the abiding rock, here is a symbol in which many high tragic thoughts watch their own eyes. Jeffers was very, very popular, as I said, as a dramatist for a while, and he was really interested in Greek classical drama. So, for instance, his retelling of Medea, which is a pretty fierce story, was a huge success on Broadway, acted by the amazing actress Dame Judith Anderson Douglas.
Yeah, I just so far the poems that we've read, they remind me a lot of Helen and Scott Nearing's works. Where the Living the Good Life and other things where they built their own homes and such like in Vermont and Maine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Probably more or less at the same, well, probably not. It was a little later than that, I guess.
Later.
Yeah.
But they both lived to be about 100.
Yeah.
Continuing the same style of life.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, Leslie.
I just wanted to say something about my changing appreciation for hawks because before maybe hawks were sort of an emblem. I have a red-shouldered hawk that's lived in the neighborhood forever, and it got killed. It got mobbed by crows. And I found it 2 days later after it had been rained on and, was really this ruined thing. But I was fascinated by it. And in fact, I took a photo that shows. Can you guys see that?
Not that well.
Not in the tiny pictures. Anyway, I was so awestruck by the power of the legs and the talons. I
Yeah.
thought, oh yeah, this creature is from a dinosaur.
Yeah.
I don't use the word awesome very often, but it filled me with awe to look not so much as the wings because they were all bedraggled and everything, but these legs were just huge and powerful. So I can see why it seems like the hawk's sort of his talismanic animal.
Yeah. Not the cross, not the hive, but this bright power, dark peace, fierce consciousness joined with final disinterestedness. The hawk is fierce, it's conscious, but it's disinterested. Yeah. Well, that would be good for today. Let's go. Now Tony, we can stop screen sharing and just talk for a couple of minutes because there were some people's faces that we couldn't see. Any comments by anybody? This is eco poetry. This is it, guys.
I didn't understand the word hive
Mm.
in that poem.
I would say it's human beings busy building their own built world. It also reminds me of Utah, the bee state, and the use of the hive in Mormon kind of iconography
Yeah, the hive is a symbol of hospitality and that kind of thing. And
and collective effort.
right.
Okay.
Yeah. But isn't there some religion um where the hive is a sacred symbol?
Yeah, cyborg.
Okay, Douglas. Yeah, I think there is something. I'm not sure. Yeah.
There's a goddess of bees and beekeeping in Lithuania that has a whole center devoted to her with bees and everything like that. So that's
Yeah.
the nearest I know.
Yeah, so that would be, associated with collectivity and with sweetness, you know. Um,
And I think the Romans had a god of bees also, and definitely a hive mentality.
yeah. Okay. Any other comments before we depart for the next little while? Julia? No? Okay, well, have a good few days. Wish us luck with this ice storm. Really, look at a map. It is seriously freaking people out because the South is not equipped for ice storms.
Yeah.
Northerners are like, oh, we deal with ice storms all the time. Yeah, you deal with ice storms all the time. The South does not. The last
My
one was 30 years ago.
my granddaughter is in school in Blacksburg, Virginia, in the mountains, and they were forecast to get almost 2 feet of snow,
Yeah,
but that's apparently now turning into a wintry mix.
yeah,
Yeah, we're going to get, well, that's why I was late. We're going to get probably 15, 16 inches of snow starting on Sunday.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the wintry mix is the worst thing. We hate
Oh,
the
yeah.
wintry mix.
Otis, you're going to get some too.
Yeah, I'm actually out of town. My wife's going to have to do all the shoveling.
Oh no,
No, no, not good.
oh no, yeah. Yeah, well, it's the ice, the ice on the branches of the trees. It's like the forecast is for major tree damage. And I have to admit, I live in terror of our pecan trees falling on our house because they're old. Neil knows they're old. They're like probably
Yeah.
over 100 years old, and they're kind of rickety. And our house is kind of rickety. We're kind of rickety.
They wouldn't kill us probably. They'd do some damage, but the house is stronger than that.
I don't
Yeah.
know. There was one time when a magnolia tree entered through the living room all the way toward the dining room because it was picked up by miracle, turned around, and crashed down. So, we've had our tree adventures.
Yeah, what Anne is not saying in this story is that she predicted it.
I predicted it.
There was a
Uh,
Civil
Oh,
War magnolia tree that used to have, I think, three trunks,
Yeah,
and
three
one
trunks.
fell down, and the other one was pointed exactly away from our house to the northeast. And we had a tree expert check out the tree, and he said, "Oh, you don't need to worry about it. It won't hurt your house unless there's a strong wind from exactly the opposite direction." And there was.
So I was at a conference and I get this phone call and it's like, well, we're sitting at the dinner table and all of a sudden there's this tree through the living room. Like literally got picked up in the air, turned around, and then crashed through, the house. So that was interesting. So anyway, guys, have a good few days and perhaps we'll see you Tuesday.
Yeah, good luck with the ice.
Good luck with the
yeah.
snow. Take
Yeah.
care, everybody.
Bye.